I've been studied in Australia for 3 years. The biggest problem for me is a language. Although I began to learn English when I was about 6 years old, and English lessons were compulsory in Chinese primary school, I still feel that I can't use English well.
So the biggest challenge I've ever met is the language during studies because I'm not a native speaker of English. So when I first came to Australia, like when I listened to the lectures and talk with my classmates, the language problem gets involved with this communication. So I can't get the best understanding of the lecture contents, and I can't express myself to the group members or my friends, local friends.
I think my academic writing is very poor, comparing with my classmates, which comes from other countries or English is their first language.
As an international student, I would say the language problem always exists. And this is my fifth year of studying at the University of Sydney. I still feel nervous when I give a presentation to the whole class.
When I'm trying to do the revision for the final exam, I listen to the recording of my lectures, and there's a big problem of my lecture content that I couldn't understand. And I try to listen to the recording again and again, but turns out that I still can't get what the lecturer is saying.
As for the detailed, I think the challenge shows the writing, like the words, how to use the words properly in the academic essay or communicate with other people. In the normal lifetime, I think I can speak. It's very fluency, but in the as for the situation in the academic studying, I think it's very difficult to express my my idea.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time on memorizing vocabs and learning grammars, but it's still hard for me to write a high quality academic paper.
I'm less confident for speaking English. When I'm communicating with others face to face, I would be very nervous. And I can't stop translating when speaking English. Sometimes I even need to repeat the sentences in my mind several times to avoid errors before I say. Large amounts of readings are required in my study. There are about physics and material science. The content is very abstract and difficult to understand, but there are still a lot of professional vocabulary and complex expressions, which is also a great challenge for me.
When I hand in my essay and I received my grades, it's most of the time it's not very very made me happy because grades is very low when I was a freshman. I asked my tutor for some help, then they told me how to avoid the plagiarism. Then I found some tips to improve my academic skills.
For improving my English, I usually read a lot of English literature and watch English TV shows like reality show. I find academic writing is the most difficult for my study, especially grammar and vocabulary. So I'm relying on e-dictionary and grammar checking tools a lot. For daily communication, I don't think language barriers still a problem for me because others can always understand what I'm saying and I understand others as well.
But as long as I'm studying, I need to use it. Like I'm writing something, I need to check if my translation is proper. And if I'm reading something, I'm definitely using it because there will be like strange words or some professional words like I don't know. So yeah. And sometimes like the sentence is so complicated, so I can't get a good understanding about it, so I need to use a translation software to, understand it. Yeah, I think I sort of overcome this challenge. Like for now, I can basically understanding the lecture contents even with the live lecture, Like while I'm in lecture room, I can get a basic understanding of what the lecturer are saying. Also, like I can express myself and my plans to my friends and my group members more, and they can understand me much better than before. I talk to people more frequently, especially with local friends, and also I watch more and more like English TV programs.
Beyond the need to interact more with the local community, it also needs a recognition by oneself that language expression doesn't need to be perfect and doesn't have to be perfect. And a lot of times everyone makes mistakes when they talk, and that's fine. And it's only when they could accept the fact that it doesn't have to be perfect that oftentimes there's a greater courage, there's more bravery for a person to reach out and to interact with others. Language isn't a barrier to cross-cultural international communication if there isn't as much that fear, because language ultimately is just a medium of communication. It's not the communication itself.
I think grouping with domestic students can improve my English skills. Of course, it's obviously, and I think the domestic students comes from other like cultural background with me, so they can broaden my horizon. For grouping with Chinese students, because we comes from same cultural background and we use same language, so it's very easy to communicate or negotiate with each other. Both of them are very hardworking and warm-hearted. They're very nice to the peers, so I think I'm very glad to grouping both of them. Yes.
I think they have their own strengths. Like for the domestic student, language is the most obvious strength of them, because like when we doing presentation or writing a report, they can give many useful advices about my language problem and help me to get better when doing the presentation or when writing assignments. And for Chinese students, I found some Chinese students are really hardworking, and also because I speak Chinese, so it will be much easier for us to communicate.
I like grouping and making friends with domestic students because I want to get a deeper understanding of their culture, and I hope they can know more about my culture. I think exchange our ideas and knowledge will help us to improve ourselves and broaden my horizon. However, sometimes some of domestic students are not willing to group with me or other Chinese students. Maybe because a language barrier usually makes our communication to be difficult. But the majority of domestic students are kind and friendly, and their kind words can reduce my pressure.
Yeah, I found it's hard to get involved with local community because of language barrier, social, cultural, and ideological differences. So I was only grouping with Chinese students, and that made me feel less stressful. And I remember the social scientists define this as protective segregation, which can provide a social cushion for the newcomers to survive and thrive in the new environment. Once I got over the initial stage of familiarizing with the new environment, I felt motivated to reach beyond my own national network. So I started making friends with domestic students and students from other cultural backgrounds.
Just general recommendations for Chinese international students into Australia. I think there's a few barriers to language learning and to cultural integration. I think the first thing is that because there's such a large number of Chinese international students, they could more or less rely on one another. And whilst that's a good thing in itself, it also causes issues of them understanding each other better through their native language instead of through English as a second language. And because of this, that they won't be able to practice English as much within the Australian, within the local context. And that would just lead to an issue with communication with domestic students, which would just further push them back into the comfort zone. And that's not good. So at the very least, international students would need to escape their comfort zones and to more interact with local communities, local environment to understand more of the nuances and expression.
Yeah, language problem is one of the most worrisome issues for Chinese international students, and sometimes we need to overcome loneliness and low self-esteem. So I think it's important to establish self-confidence, trust ourselves, and believe we have the ability to overcome the challenges and achieve our goals.